What's up, gamers? Riftbound's release is approaching fast, so we'll have to get into these reviews. Today we're looking at Mind, at the blue color, and it starts again with the Seal of Insider. We already basically covered this with the previous colors. The short of it is that this is not for every deck, as investing an entire card into this can be quite damning in terms of card advantage, but we know that the effect to just add a power is very powerful. Kaiser is the best legend. It's basically what she does. So these seals are good cards and will find a home somewhere, sometime. Next up, Orb of Regret. 1 energy gear. Exhausted to give a unit -1 this turn to a minimum of 1. This seems like a fine card. I don't think it's particularly strong. Like investing an entire card into just a small effect every single turn, but with it being 1 energy, with it being usable immediately, you can run it out quite early, and like over time the value will add up, right? Next up, a 1 energy spell, Retreat, a reaction. Return a friendly unit to its owner's hand. Its owner channels 1 rune Exhausted. Okay, so this is a cool card. First of all, you can use it defensively by returning like when you control a battlefield, have a unit there, your opponent moves there with a bigger unit, you can just bounce your unit back to hand and keep that resource there for future turns. Also, you do get a rune, so this interestingly is kind of a ram spell as well, but I don't think this is the main purpose that you will use it for. I feel like the biggest purpose is kind of in Hearthstone, like Shadow Step. If you have like a very powerful on-play effect, just returning that unit to your hand and getting that on-play effect again. This is where I think this card really shines. And for one energy, it's fine. It's not great at doing that, but you do get the 1 rune Exhausted on top of that. And like quite a bit of flexibility in this card, so I do think this is definitely a good card and a very, very interesting card to play with. Next up, 1 energy Stupefy. Reaction, give a unit -1 this turn to a minimum of 1. Draw 1. Yeah, this is just a good card. Like, yes, the effect does not do like too much in terms of changing the tides of battle, so to say, but the added draw 1 is really good, and again, there will be times where just cycling this for 1 energy is okay, so there's really not a lot of downside to playing this card. Next up, 2 energy, 1 power, 2 might, Blast Cone Fae. Hidden. When you play me, give a unit -2 this turn to a minimum of 1. Alright, so obviously something that's probably pretty good in like a hidden strategy. Outside of that, it has some potential, like hiding it somewhere and then playing it as a 4 might swing, kind of. Doesn't sound that bad. The only issue I have with it, again, is the power cost. That might make it unattractive to all non-hidden strategies, but it's not a bad interaction even there, in my opinion. Next up, 2 energy, 1 power, Convergent Mutation. Reaction, choose a friendly unit, increase its might until it equals the might of another friendly unit. Okay. I do think this is a good card. It is kind of specific. though, like for decks that play very big minions and very small minions alongside each other. And the prime application I can think of for this right now would be like a Victor deck. Like there are a couple of minions that for their cost are overstated, but you have to kill one of your units to bring them out, which the Victor tokens are really good at. And if you play like a couple of these super big minions that are basically kind of a tribute summon, if you think about it in New Year terms, alongside these tokens, not only to pay their cost, but maybe even get some benefit out of by buffing them with cards like Convergent Mutation, that's definitely interesting. That's definitely interesting. In a strategy like this, Convergent Mutation I think is a pretty good card. But it is relatively specific to these kind of decks. Next up, 2 energy gear, Garbage Grabber. Recycle 3 from your trash and pay 1 energy to draw 1. Ooh. This is a card with quite a bit of potential, I think. So you basically pay 3 during your first turn to recycle 3 and draw 1. That's obviously pretty bad, but afterwards, drawing 1 every single turn for just a singular energy sounds really powerful. I feel like that can generate a lot of advantage. We'll have to see how relevant the recycle is already. Also, you do kind of have to, like, later down the line, as this game ages, the recycle might actually be a benefit. You might have decks that burn through resources so quickly that just putting some gas back into it and extending your longevity with the strategy could actually be really, really helpful. And sometimes later, like we're talking like way into the future here, even more beneficial than the draw. But right now, this could become the recycle could kind of be the crux of this card, because drawing an additional card every single turn just for one for like a single energy is insane. But keeping enough cards in your trash to actually like do this over the course of multiple turns, like yeah, maybe for 2, 3, 4 turns this works, but eventually you're gonna run out. And so that's kind of what this depends on. Right now is like a deck that can keep the resources in the graveyard high enough for this to constantly work out. So a lot of potential in this card, especially in the future. I feel like this is one of those cards that only gets better and better as time goes on, but I'm not entirely sure whether or not we are there yet. Signature spell for Timos, skip that, we'll have that in the legend discussion. Then another 2 energy gear, the Mushroom Pouch. At the start of your beginning phase, if you control a face down card at a battlefield, draw 1. Alright, so like for any card, for any deck that plays with a lot of hidden effects, this card is just insane. This is just a really powerful card, and honestly, for now, I suspect, because blue is one of Timo's colors, that we'll see a lot more synergy for that in this video, but for now this is kind of the prime payoff for the hidden strategy. Granted that it is able to consistently keep battlefields, but that's kind of like assuming that strategy will be good. That is something that the strategy will have to be able to do almost all of the time, right? So we're going to assume that this works out, and then this card is quite incredible. I'll be a little bit slow, but with just the energy cost of 2, I feel like that's fine. One question that remains obviously is how slow the hidden deck will be. Maybe we can figure this out together in this video. Like, if it's a very fast aggressive strategy, this might not find a place in there. Next up, 2 energy, 2 might, Ravenbloom student. When you play a spell, give me +1 might this turn. This card is crazy. Like, just playing this baseline, 2 energy, 2 might is already fine. That's already fine. And just an additional might makes this really good. Not to mention that in I'm mentioning Kaiser a lot, but if you play Kaiser, this can easily get like +2, +3 consistently every turn, and that's for 2-drop just really, really ridiculous. And it especially synergizes pretty well, right, with just putting this on a battlefield and then using reactions to keep it there, to hold that battlefield with this, and with every reaction you play, or action with every spell you play, this just gets stronger. This makes it really easy, and this is definitely one of the best 2-drops we have right now in the game. Victor's signature spell, gonna keep that for the legend video. Next up, 2 energy, 1 might, smoke screen reaction. Give a unit -4 this turn to a minimum of 1. This is just a solid card. -4 is quite the big swing as a reaction. Really good. Note you could even, during your turn, play this before combat, reduce something, and then hit it with a removal spell or something like that. So there's also a lot of utility in that. Helps these spell-focused decks to out like slightly bigger minions. And again, the power cost feels kind of rough sometimes on this, I think, which is why I don't think it's like a super great card. But it will be worth it most of the time. Next up, Teemo strategy. 2 energy, 2 might, 1 power. Hidden. When I defend or I'm played from hidden, reveal the top 5 cards of your main deck. Do you want an enemy unit here for each card with hidden, then recycle them? Okay, this is a weird card. I really don't like this kind of design because it's awkward to play around for both players, right? When this gets activated, neither player knows how much damage this is gonna deal, which, yeah, it's just awkward to play around, and obviously really depends on how many hidden cards you have in your deck, how dense the deck is. But even if you play like a super high count of hidden cards, if you put every single one into your deck, I don't know how many there will be, there might still just be these unlucky scenarios where on average maybe you draw like 3 of them, deal 3 damage on average, and that might be the unlucky scenario where you just need 1 to stay in the game and you don't get it, and that's obviously quite tilting. This RNG factor is something, even as a Hearthstone player, that I'm not too fond of. This kind of RNG, at least. There are a lot more healthy ways, but if the hidden, like if the density of hidden cards can go high enough in the deck, this will probably be a pretty good card. Like it's already good when it deals like 1 or 2 damage. All right, next card. Oh no, first the alt art, now the next card. 2 energy, 1 might, watchful sentry, death knell, draw 1. This is just solid. This is just a decent card, especially like for decks that want to find certain very important cards, cycle through the decks that can do a lot with tokens. Victor comes to mind particularly, and yeah, just overall solid card, and strong with buff effects, strong with like any effect that kind of sacrifices one of your units. And even outside of that, just playing this on your first turn and getting a point unanswered basically, and then later on getting a draw from that is pretty good. Like for the first conquer of the game, the might doesn't really matter, right? So this is enough there. Like even like some slower decks that are not too much into using tokens, synergizing with tokens, might like this card. Next up, Ari, 3 energy, Ari Inquisitive. 3 energy, 1 power, 3 might. When I attack or defend, give an enemy unit here -2 this turn to a minimum of 1. So it kind of has just 5. No, not truly, but it's pretty close. Which is fine. That said, for the level of like champions cards we've seen, you would usually want a little bit more, I feel like, from a 3 energy 1 power champion drop. It's not abysmal, but I don't think this is particularly impressive. Like, because we especially have to consider again Kaiser, with a lot of removal, a lot of damage-based removal. So against Kaiser, this is basically just a 3 might card, and it's not that Kaiser is the only deck that can like deal 3 damage to a unit, right? This will be relatively common in that in those terms. It is basically just a 3 might unit, even if in combat it oftentimes will be 5. So even right now, considering the metagame, this card is particularly bad. Even if the meta changes and this damage-based removal becomes a lot less, even then I don't think this is particularly convincing. Her alt art is pretty cool though. Next up, 3 energy, 3 might, Eager Apprentice. While I'm at a battlefield, the energy costs for spells you play is reduced by 1 to a minimum of 1. This is an interesting card. There's definitely potential in it. The difficult part is that its effect is only active at a battlefield, which means your opponent will have a lot easier time removing this. It's quite exposed once you move a unit to a battlefield, so you will kind of want to use its effect pretty much immediately. So you play it, next turn commit it to a battlefield, and then get a big payoff turn there. In that scenario, this is probably a relatively good card. I just don't think that scenario, especially once we factor in like removal, is that likely, and it's not like you can expect multiple turns of this. So that would obviously be crazy if you could get this payoff for multiple turns. That is probably game winning in certain strategies. I just think that the scenario from the beginning is a little bit too optimistic. I don't think that will happen like super often. Next up, 3 energy conduit. Reaction add 1, abilities that add resources can't be reacted to. Alright, so basically a ramp gear. You do, to an extent, pay 3 energy to ramp 1. That cannot be used for recycle costs. Technically, because this can be used immediately, gears enter ready, and there's nothing that says that this can't be used in the first turn. Technically, you do, if you have like some play alongside it, you do technically only pay 2 energy for this, which is kind of what might get these to the edge where it's fine. Usually 3 energy to ramp 1 is not that good. It's not that good, especially because, again, you can't use it to pay recycle costs. That hurts. So I don't think we'll see a lot of it, but it's good enough to where a deck wants to like really desperately ramp super aggressively, because it has such an insane payoff, then this could see play there, but overall it's kind of mid. Ari signature spell, will cover that in the legends. 3 energy, 1 power, 3 might. Gemcraft Seer Vision. When you play me, look at the top card of your main deck, you may recycle it. Other units have vision, so once this is on the board, you basically, whenever you play a unit, get to look at the top card of your deck and recycle it. Interesting effect. Definitely not a bad effect, making your deck like a lot more consistent, a lot more reliable, and in strategies that are quite dependent on what's on top of their deck, like a card like the Teemo Strategist comes to mind, things like that. There definitely is potential to this. I do kind of have the feeling that initially playing this is not good enough to see play like without some synergy on like without some synergy that you need specific cards on the top of your deck. Inside those decks it might make the cut, especially if they are like unit based enough, but even there, like, this is at best kind of a solid card in my opinion. Next up, Heimerdinger. 3 energy, 1 power, 3 might. Heimerdinger Inventor. I have all exhaust abilities of all friendly legends, units, and gear. Alright, this is a very cool card. This is a very cool card. So if we have the energy conduit, we can... This is basically another energy conduit. Okay, yeah, copying an effect like this is strong. There's a lot of flexibility in this. We just need enough gears with exhaust effects, or like other units with strong exhaust effects, to make this good enough. We'll have to see if we're there yet at this point, but this is definitely a card with a lot of potential for the future. Next up, 3 energy, 2 might. Lecturing Yordle. Tank. When you play me, draw 1. This is again similar to the Sentry, just a solid card. Drawing immediately obviously makes it a lot better. It's a little bit understated, but with you get a keyword on top of it. Tank is kind of weird to have on a small minion, right? You'd prefer it on like a large minion that's difficult to kill, but it is an upside, so it's not that understated if you factor in the keyword. And drawing a card on top of it is really crazy. Like, a lot of slower decks, even maybe token decks again, that like just going wide with small minions, will appreciate this card. Pit Crew. When you play a gear, ready me. 3 energy, 3 might. Okay, so in a gear focused deck, this is a decent card. It's pretty good. Like, just playing it for 3 energy without the upside is okay, right? And just readying it once or twice already makes it good enough. So if we ever get like a blue deck that's very gear focused and maybe is a little bit low on 3 drops, this is definitely a good option. 3 energy, 1 power, Portal Rescue action. Banish a friendly unit, then play it to base, ignoring its cost. Okay. This is an interesting card again. So this also has like the utility of being able to play a particularly strong on-play effect again. But this can also dodge targeting, right? Oh no, it's just an action. It's just an action, it's not a reaction. So you can't, if your opponent plays a removal spell, you can't chain this basically to the enemy targeting one of your units with one of their removal spells. To banish it, the removal fizzles. To banish it, bring it back, and the removal fizzles because the target technically has changed. Like, this is something that my Yu-Gi-Oh! Brain went to immediately. This does not work with this card, which is a downer. Like, I really would have liked that aspect of the card. And without it, again, there's potential. There's a lot of flexibility in this card, like the getting on-play effects again, the fact that technically you can also move a unit with that, like you banish it from a battlefield, put it to base. Like, there's interesting utility in this, and just the utility maybe enough to make this a good card, especially if you have particularly strong synergies with it. Like a deck that's really into replaying those some very strong on-play effects obviously wants to have more effects to replay them, so this might make a cut in something like that. That said, I feel like for the cost, this usually feels quite bad. Like, it does a lot of things, but there are a lot of interesting situations that can arise where this is a good effect, but even in all of those, in pretty much all of those situations, unless you get a obscenely powerful on-play effect, it always seems kind of expensive for what it does. Next up, 3 energy sprite call, hidden action. Play a ready 3 sprite unit token with temporary kill it at the start of its controller's beginning phase before scoring. Okay, this is a fine hidden spell. Like, if you play it for hidden, especially in the hidden deck with a Teemo leader, like, all the hidden costs are cheaper, which makes this a lot better. So in a deck like that, this might make the cut, but overall it's a very, very mediocre card, because 3 energy just for a sprite with temporary, basically kind of to just deal 3 damage, because you will usually cast this in combat. Doesn't sound too great. That said, its flexibility and things like that, it makes it so that it's not terrible, especially, like I said, in the hidden decks, it's probably fine. 4 mana, consult the past. Hidden reaction, draw 2. Alright, that's just a solid draw spell. For 4, it may feel like slightly overcosted, like from other card games the rate of oftentimes is 3. I'm not sure how this is in card games where you get 4, like 2 runes every single turn. Like, slightly higher energy cost might be fine there compared to like Arcane Intellect in Hearthstone. And it has added utility to this, right? You can also play it for 1 power, and 1 power for 4 energy honestly seems like a pretty good rate. It's obviously insane if you can play it for cheaper in any way. It also has the reaction, so if you need an out to a certain play your opponent does, you can just dig for it, which is pretty cool. So yeah, just a good card. Next up, for energy 3 might, Malzahar Fanatic. Kill a friendly unit or gear, exhaust, action, add 2 power. Use on your turn or in showdowns. Okay, killing a card for 2 power can definitely be worth it. Usually you do want to have, like, either have like spare tokens to do so, or get an additional advantage, like the draw 1 from the Watchful Sentry. That's if you hit that, this is obviously a strong effect. But for this to be good enough, it needs a very specific deck. I feel like unless you get the unless you get an additional effect out of there often enough, it's not that good. Something to note is this is an action, so if you have a unit at the battlefield, your opponent moves there, you can, if you would lose anyways, you can just kill it at the 2 runes and do something else with it. Maybe use the 2 power for like a removal spell or whatever. So there definitely are places for this card, and where this card could shine. We'll just have to see how common they actually are. Next up, for energy 1 power 3 might Sprite Mother. When you play a ready 3 might Sprite unit with temporary here, and this card, this card is good. This is an insanely strong 4-drop. Like, again, the power cost and things like that, but you get 6 might in stats, which for 4 with 1 might is already quite good. But 3 of those stats, even if they are temporary, they can act immediately, and that's really powerful. For your 4 energy and 1 might, you basically get 3 damage immediately, maybe a point immediately, something like that, and then still have a 3 might drop left in your base for the next turn. This is just a really good card, particularly for decks that want to go wide. If you have like additional buffs, buffing everything, this can help there additionally. Or like I said, getting the Sprite, move immediately, get a point, kill it off for something else, also pretty good. This is just a card that's almost always good to see, and that makes the card good. Next up, Victor Innovator. For energy 1 power 3 might, when you play a card on your opponent's turn, play a 1 recruit unit token in your base. Okay, obviously just for its stats it's quite expensive, but this is the kind of card you usually just want to put out and keep in your base to be as difficult as to remove as possible, and then get a lot of recruit tokens in the following turns. And for that I think it's pretty good. Something to note is that it really depends on a deck that has a lot of cheap cards to play on your opponent's turn. Like if you play this, you definitely want to get like 3, 4, 5 recruits over its lifetime to make it worth your while, and having enough resources, enough of those low spells, having it survive long enough, like even if it's in your base, it's not unkillable depending on the matchup. Certain decks can still remove it. So it's kind of dependent on how either how many spells you can, how many cards you can play immediately on your opponent's following turn, or how sticky it actually is, how difficult it actually is for decks in the meta to remove cards in your base. Depending on this could definitely be a good card, but it's not like it's super insane in every single meta game. The alt art is pretty insane though. And next up, 5 energy, 4 might, Ava Achiever. Ava Achiever. Funny wordplay there. When I attack, you may pay 1 mind power to play a card with hidden from your hand here, ignoring its costs. Okay, yeah, interesting. that does not hide now for... This does not really make it like... There could at some point be like hidden there that needs multiple power to play them out. At that point, this obviously becomes a lot better. Maybe there already are cards like that. If you just play a card with the normal hidden, this does not do too much, right? And for 5 energy, just 4, you do kind of want to cheat things out. Otherwise, this is just this doesn't really do anything. Next up, Echo Recurrent. 5 energy, 1 power, 5 might, accelerate. Death Knell, recycle me to ready your runes. When I die, get the effect, of course. Okay. Like, just as the 5 energy, 1 power, 5 might with accelerate, it's not that bad. Like, that's a fine card, although you could do better. Like, the power cost hurts quite a lot there. The effect to ready your runes again afterwards, though, makes this really interesting, because you can play this, accelerate into a battlefield, maybe already remove something there, it dies, you get the effect and play another threat. Like, while this card is slightly overcosted, if you don't think about the recycle effect, about the death knell effect, there's a lot of tempo in this card. Something to note though is if you accelerate this, you're putting back you're readying 2 runes less because you've put them back, right? Now that feels kind of awkward and makes me tend to think that this is not a particularly great card. On this one I could be wrong though, because the potential tempo that this generates can be quite insane. Next up, 5 energy, Falling Comet. Action, deal 6 to a unit at a battlefield. Okay. From what I've seen, 6 is a relatively important breakpoint right now. Like, to say, like, 6 is something that you can deal quite often, that removes quite a lot, but once units get to 7 and things like that, that's really where they become quite hard to out, quite sticky. So this doesn't do that. This does not solve that problem there. For 5 energy, 6 damage is kind of low. Like, if we compare it to the Falling Star, that has more flexibility, yes, you do use 2 power, but the added flexibility just makes it a lot better. Whereas this for 5, like, it's not bad. It's like solid removal, but nothing particularly exciting. 5 energy, 5 might, Jeweled Colossus, Vision and Shield. Okay, this is just a fine 5-drop. Like, a 5 energy, 5 might with Shield already isn't that bad, right? And getting the Vision, obviously, if you have something again that synergizes with it, it becomes a lot better. But Vision is an effect, like, if you kind of get it as a bonus effect with certain cards, there will be a lot of decks happy to get it. Like, it's not a crazy good effect, but it's a nice bonus in probably every deck. So this is a solid card. I would imagine that at 5 we're getting into the range where you can't put that many of those cards into your deck, where you have to kind of start to evaluate which ones are the better ones, and I can imagine this card, especially by a lot of champion cards, being a little bit outclassed. which may be the reason why we might not see a whole lot of this, but overall this is a decent card. 5 energy, 1 power, promising future. Each player looks at the top 5 cards of their main deck, chooses one and recycles the rest. Starting with the next player, each player plays those cards, ignoring energy costs. They must still pay power costs. Okay. This is a funny card. And particularly in like when you play with more players, with 4 players, things like that. This is a very, very funny card. And in that situation might actually not be too bad. If you play, if we're thinking about like one-on-one, you are really reliant on getting some, like you have to get something that's quite a bit better than your opponent for this to be worth it, and I don't think that's happening a whole lot. Like in 4 players, if you can kind of like do the politics with the other players, kind of negotiating things like that, and maybe some of the things that the other persons do might be beneficial for you. This isn't actually that bad, and it's very, very fun. But in one-on-one, I just don't see it. Your payoff needs to be so much greater than your opponent's, and I don't think that is like, you're paying 4 energy, 1 power, 5 energy, 1 power already. So basically, you want your unit to be that much, or the card you're getting that much better than the card your opponent is getting. And I don't know, even with the more aggressive decks, they still probably find like a 5 or 6 drop. So not really something that will happen a lot. Next up, 6 energy, 6 might, 1 power, Kaiser Evolutionary. Yanking. When I conquer, you may play a spell from your trash with energy cost less than your points without paying its energy cost, then recycle it. Okay, this is a cool card. With these stats, like 6 energy, 1 power for 6 might with ganking is okay. It doesn't feel great, but it's okay. The reason to play this card though is the other effect, and that effect can obviously be very, very powerful. And we know, like Draven Showboat, I wasn't quite sure how strong he would be, and he's actually a quite decent card from what I'm seeing. So getting the first couple of points to get like a 3 or 4 energy cost spell back is very realistic, especially when playing this like at 6, turn 3, turn 4, something like that. You probably have a couple of points already, and it's not like this needs a crazy expensive spell to be worth your time. If you play just a single 2, 3, 4 energy cost spell additionally with it, it's already pretty good. That said, it is kind of slow on top of that. You have to play it, then you have to have the ability to conquer. That's something at that point of the game that may not be particularly easy, and you might just rather have a card that helps you conquering, if you get what I mean, instead of something that gets the payoff afterwards, especially if the card is that reliant on the payoff. Overall, I still think it's a decent card. I'm just not sure if you can utilize it consistently enough to be worth its time. Something to mention though that I could definitely see for this card is that it's kind of an option for Kaiser to use as in the champion zone against slower matchups. That's definitely something I could see with this card. Usually though, I think this is like one of those cards that might barely makes that's like kind of on the line, whether it's good enough to make the cut or not. And then her alt art. Next up, 6 energy, 1 power, 5 might. Looks illuminated. When you play a spell that costs 5 or more, give me +3 this turn. I don't think this card is great either, because it's already quite expensive. Then you have to play expensive spells with it. We're looking at a pretty slow deck, and if this comes down just without its additional might, it's obviously quite bad. And then on top of that, even if you play the 5-cost spells, this just being an 8 might, a 6 energy, 1 power, 8 might unit with downside, does not seem particularly good. Oh, wrong direction. Next up, Progress Day. 6 energy, 1 power, draw 4. This for the rate I feel like is fine. This is actually, this might like in terms of the rate, this might actually be pretty good. The question is just at that point, with if this is a little bit too clunky, a little bit too expensive, you will oftentimes, when you play this, you will play like almost your entire, you will spend almost your entire turn on it. And yes, drawing 4 is strong, but not really doing anything else for an entire turn can be quite punishing. So I don't think that this is a bad card, but it needs like, it's difficult to justify, like, again, spending the entire turn on it. That's something that most decks will not be able to, or will not want to afford for drawing 4 cards. I feel like there will oftentimes be better options that are not quite as bad tempo-wise. Once you get to start cheating this out, maybe at some point, it's obviously a crazy card. And again, it's already solid. I just think that it's a little bit too clunky, a little bit too weak tempo wise to actually find a home in a lot of decks. Even in terms of slower decks, a lot of them probably cannot afford to do this. Next up, Riptide Rex, 6 energy, 2 power, 6 might. When you play me, deal 6 to an enemy unit at a battlefield, and I think this is just a solid 6 drop. The 2 power cost is quite hefty, but having an additional impact, having immediate impact, removing something right off the bat, and then having that 6 might body left for next turn is quite a strong effect. And especially right now in the beginning, I not be surprised to see this card relatively commonly in like mid-rangey to control blue decks. 6 energy, 2 power, singularity, deal 6 to each of up to 2 units. This I think is kind of meta dependent. This the way it's costed, you really don't feel that good if it doesn't hit 2 like 5, 6 might units. You definitely want to get most out of the spell to make it really worth your while. Maybe again, for Kaiser, with being able to pay the space and basically play this for just 1 power, that might change a little bit, but 6 is quite large. Your opponent having 2 units with 6. Notably, this can deal with units that are in base, so that's a big upside, and that might actually also be a big like be the main factor why people consider this card over others. But it also doesn't have that much utility, since compared to the Falling Star, you can't hit the same unit twice. You can't just kill a 12 damage unit. If we could do that, this would be a pretty good card. Without that, I think it's just solid and kind of dependent on if we have enough decks in the metagame that you reasonably expect to have 2 units that are on the larger side. It's not an action though. That makes it slightly worse. So, but still, a solid card. Maybe a little bit more than that for Kaiser. Wraith of Echoes, 6 energy, 1 power, 5 might. The first time a friendly unit dies each turn, draw 1. Okay, it's just the first time. Notably, you can get this effect immediately after playing it out. So if you're planning to move on a battlefield and maybe lose a couple of units there, you can play this beforehand, already get the draw off of that. That's pretty good. And it's a good safety mechanism that you can only draw 1. Although that makes it so that I'm not entirely sure if this is good enough. Like, for this to be good, how many do you need to draw? Probably like at 2 or 3 you start to feel good about this card, which means it has to live for 2 or 3 turns. No, particularly 2 turns might definitely be the case. Getting 2 draws, like 1 during your turn, 1 during your opponent's turn, something like that. It seems fine. In these token strategies, this might have a place, or in decks that unload like a lot of go wide very early, unload most of their hand right away, and then are trying to kind of find something to reload a little bit later on, to not be immediately out of the game after the first wave. This for those kind of decks, this is definitely an interesting card, but I don't think it's good enough that it's like an auto inclusion in these kinds of decks. Next up, 7 energy, 3 power, can be red or blue. Oh, it's a signature spell. Sorry, we did not want to talk about these. We're going to talk about these in due time, so I got carried away there. Once we're done with all the colors, we'll have a look at the legends and then look at their signature spells as a whole. Then Mega Mech, 7 energy, 8 might, just a vanilla. One of the few ones we do get, slightly overstated for the energy cost there. Luckily, it does not cost a power, so it's an okay drop. Although with these kind of vanilla things, I feel like once you're getting into like the 7 energy, maybe this is barely enough there, but for the most part, I think at that point I want things there that either do something like really powerful, that are super threatening, that have to be removed immediately, otherwise they win the game, or that have some immediate impact, that like immediately kill something from your opponent, immediately cheat another thing out, buff something else, whatever, just something that makes them have an impact immediately. And a vanilla obviously doesn't do that, so this probably is not a good card. On the other hand though, the Thousand-Tailed Watcher, 7 energy, 1 power, 7 might. Accelerate on top of that, obviously always good to have that flexibility. When you play me, give enemy units -3 might this turn to a minimum of 1. Combined with the accelerate of this is a big swing. This is like, if your opponent is very well established at a battlefield with like multiple units, this alone, coming down, weakening everything, accelerating to the battlefield, this alone can take out so much. It also synergizes with like removal spells and things like that, because it makes them smaller immediately. So if your opponent has like a 6 might unit, you play this down, you use your removal spell for 3 damage on it, remove it that way, and then this takes care of the remaining units there. This is a very strong card, and for the reasons that Mega Mech is not, because this does something immediately. This represents an immediate big tempo and board swing that can, at this point, very much threaten the game. Next up, 7 energy, 2 power, unchecked power. Exhaust all friendly units, then deal 12 to all units at battlefields. Ooh, okay, so basically this kills everything that's committed, and ideally you can take away friendly units beforehand. The thing is, you can't do anything afterwards with for such a big board clear. Like, this will almost always completely clear all battlefields. You not being able to immediately conquer one afterwards is probably a good thing. So this is probably the most powerful board clear we have so far. The only question with this card, which might make it kind of meta dependent, is how much of that power that you're obviously paying for with its cost, like this is not a cheap card, how much of this power is overkill. If something a little bit weaker, a little bit cheaper already does the trick, you'd rather have that, obviously. So depending on the meta that evolves, if it's like pretty aggressive, pretty low cost things, then this is not the card to play. If like the Aurora ramp big unit decks suddenly become rampant at a point, this obviously feels really good. Maybe this makes it like the perfect side deck cards for those specific matchups. Definitely can see it there, because if you get enough of this to like enough out of this to warrant the cost, this is a crazy good card. In a lot of matchups you probably don't though, so yeah, probably a pretty good side deck option, or even main deck in specific meta games. Next up, 8 energy to power, 6 might, Dr. Mundo Expert. My might is increased by the number of cards in your trash. At the start of your beginning phase, recycle 3 from your trash. Okay, so this comes out, it's probably obscenely big, like we're talking 15, 20, maybe even more, like very late into the game. But it slowly gets smaller. Still, if you play this, it's at 20, you recycle 3, it's still at 17, that's still quite big. Then the next turn 14, like, it stays pretty strong. So I think this is a card relatively similar to Draven. It will probably be quite a bit bigger, which is warranted because it's also quite a bit more expensive. The difference to Draven is, whereas Draven, even if you play him out earlier, he becomes stronger. This is like the last push oftentimes. Like, this is, if you get to 6-7 points, if you really want to try and hold a battlefield to get that last point, which you cannot get by just conquering one battlefield, just dropping this down, being really big, being almost impossible to remove for at least 1 or 2 turns, is really strong, and definitely catches, like can definitely be very devastating to certain strategies. Like, I imagine that there are not a lot of decks when this comes out that can remove it like soon. The cost for it though is that it's It's super expensive. It's very bad. Like even on curve, it's probably not that crazy already. Like this is the last threat you want to play. But as that, like kind of a one-off, two-off in some slower decks, maybe even a side deck card to be able to close out better against certain strategies. For that situation, this is a good card. And then 10 energy, 4 power, time warp. Take a turn after this one, banish this. So it's banished to be more difficult to recast, to recycle. It makes sense. It's incredibly expensive, but for this kind of effect, it has to be. And this is the kind of card, if you go into a turn, if you have 6 point, go into the turn, you hold, you're at 7, and then you time warp for the 8th point. This is the way that this card works. Obviously you could instead, if you already have a lot of units in your base, you could also move them to a battlefield, conquer that, get the 7th point that way, and then time warp for the 8th holding point there. And that's pretty powerful. That's pretty powerful. That is definitely something that can make closing out the game, getting that last point, a lot easier, and we'll see play for that fact. Especially if you have like and we do see that right now, if you have a like slightly more aggressive, maybe mid-range deck against a very slow deck that's really comfortable in this very late game scenario, this is a very strong side deck option to, similar to Mundo, be able to get that last point in. So main deck in very slow metagames maybe, but in the side deck I think we're gonna see this card relatively often, and from what we know so far, Kaiser does like playing this in the side deck. Alright, are there any cards left, or were that all? Those probably were all, right? Okay, nice. So we're done with Mind, and honestly so far, this seems like a very strong color. Although, especially the late game options for this color seem very strong. Like, aside from that, we have some gear synergy, we have some token synergy, we have some hidden synergy. Like, a lot of these cards are relatively specific, but we do have early on some pretty good reactions. Some pretty solid minions with Ravenloom Student, Watchful Sentries, things like that. Sprite Mother, another very strong card, and then very powerful late game options. Riptide Rex, Singularity, Unchecked Power, Time Warp, Dr. Mundo, and particularly Thousand-Tailed Watcher. Thousand-Tailed Watcher is one of the best late game drops so far, so things are looking pretty good for Mind decks. So let's see what the other colors have in store. If you're interested for that, like and subscribe to not miss any of it, and I hope you will enjoy this Riftbound release weekend as much as I do and give in to the hype. It's worth it, believe me.